Hi all, hope you've been staying safe and well. Today I'm going to have a look at the finale of Act 3 and look at the final scene, which is Act 3, Scene 5. As we talked about previously, the structure of the play, each of the acts ends on a different sort of cliffhanger. So we have Act 1 ending with Romeo and Juliet falling in love but realising they're from the different families. Act 2 ends with the wedding of Romeo and Juliet, and Act 3 is no different. It ends on a big cliffhanger and leaves the audience enticed to want to find out more about what's going to happen in Act 4 and finale in Act 5. So this is going to run through the scene. There's quite a lot that happens. There's a lot of dramatic shifts that happen. So I hope it's really useful for you. Okay, as I spoke about in the previous video, Act 3 is structured in such a way that Act 1 we have this very dramatic fight with the deaths of Mercutio and Tybalt, and the remainder of the act is reactions to that. So in the previous video when we were looking at scenes 2, 3 and 4, we have reactions to Tybalt and Mercutio's death. We have Juliet's despair, we have Romeo's despair, and we have the Lord Capulet in Paris discussing about arranging his marriage to Juliet for the following Thursday. Now, what we have at the end of the act is all of those things accumulating together. We have Romeo has snuck back into the Capulet mansion and he spent the night with Juliet, and then the scene of Act 3, Scene 5 is the morning, daybreak. Romeo needs to leave. He needs to immediately get out of this place, because if he found, he will be executed. So we have a very dramatic ending to the act. Okay, so as the scene opens, Romeo and Juliet have spent the night together as man and wife, and Romeo now needs to leave the Capulet mansion. He needs to get himself away from Verona as quickly as possible so that he's not captured and he's not put to death. Now, we have echoes of what happens in Act 2, Scene 2 here, where Romeo and Juliet, when they are wanting to say goodbye, it takes a long time. They don't really want to leave each other. Obviously, they're newly in love, they're newly married, they spent the first night together, they now don't want to leave. So the scene opens with Juliet saying, "Will thou be gone? It is not yet day. It was the nightingale and not the lark that pierced the faithful hollow of the ear." So Juliet's saying that don't go. That bird song that you're hearing is nightingales, which sing in the evening and night time, rather than a lark, which would sing in the morning. Romeo responds with, "It was the lark, the herald of the morn, no nightingale. Look, love, what envious streaks do lace the severing clouds in yonder east." So the clouds in the east are starting to be broken up by daybreak, by sunbeams. So we know that light is going to bring the day, and as people start to wake up and start to see the world, then Romeo will be discovered. He's worried about being discovered. Juliet says, "Your light is not daylight, I know it. It is some newborn meteor, and the sun exhales. To be the top is thee is night a torchbearer, and light thee on the way to Mantua. Therefore stay yet, thou needst not be gone." So Juliet is desperate for Romeo to stay. She's willing to make any excuse. She says that the sunbeams aren't sunbeams. It's like it's a comet that's going to light you on your way as you make your trip to Mantua. So she's desperate for him to stay. But Romeo, in a more practical mind, says, let me be taken, let me be put to death. I am content, so thou wilt have it so. I'll stay yon graze not the morning's eye. 'Tis but a pale reflex of Cynthia's brow. Nor that is the lark whose notes do beat the vaulty heaven so high above our heads. I have more care to stay than to go. Come death and welcome, Juliet wills it so. So he's sort of being playful here. He's saying that death would be preferable. It's because Juliet wants him to stay, and if he is to die, then that's fine because Juliet wants him to stay. In reality, he's being playful there. He's not seriously considering death. He knows that he must leave, but he's joking with her. Now, the joy and the sort of the peace of their relationship is disrupted as the nurse arrives and says, "Lady, your lady mother is coming to your chamber. The day is broke, be wary, look about. So she's well aware of what's going to happen if Romeo is discovered. So Juliet says, let the day in and let life out. So as the window opens, daylight comes in, but everything that's important to her and her life is to leave through the window. And Romeo says, farewell, farewell, one kiss and I'll descend. And he heads down the rope ladder. However, he doesn't go. He stands on the ladder waiting. Juliet, art thou gone so, Lord, I, husband, friend, I must hear from thee every day and the hour. For in a minute there be many days, or by this count I shall be much in years, ere again I behold my Romeo. So Juliet's saying, you need to keep in contact with me. You need to keep saying, I want to hear from you all the time. Romeo, farewell, I will wait no opportunity that may convey my greetings and love to thee. So he promises that I will send his love to her at all times. Now, as Romeo descends the ladder, Juliet has a vision. She sees something. So at the end of this image here we have, O God, I have an ill-divining soul. Methinks I see thee now. Thou art so low as one dead in the bottom of a tomb. Either my eyesight fails or thou lookst pale. And Romeo, and trust me, love, in my eyes so do you. Dry sorrow drinks our blood. Adieu, adieu. And he leaves for good. Now what Juliet's saying here is she sees Romeo as if he's in a tomb. She sees him as if he's in his body, foreshadowing what is going to happen to them both at the end of Act 5. So a lot to get from that opening sequence, a lot to get from those opening ideas. Essentially, we need to look at Juliet and Romeo's reluctance to leave each other, and importantly, this foreshadowing of death that occurs right at the end, just before Romeo leaves Juliet, for what they think might potentially be the last time. Okay, so the nurse's warning is actually very important because Lady Capulet is just about to arrive to pass on some news to Juliet. So what we have, Lady Capulet arrives with, why, how now, Juliet? And Juliet responds with, Madam, I am not well. So Lady Capulet can see how Juliet is distressed. We know it's just because Romeo has left. Lady Capulet thinks it's because of the death of Tybalt. She says, evermore weeping for your cousin's death. What wilt thou wash him from his grave with tears? And if thou couldst not make him live, therefore have done. Some grief shows much of love, but much of grief shows still some want of wit. So Lady Capulet's saying, what is the point of crying for Tybalt too much? You're not going to be able to cry him alive again. You're not going to be able to wash him from his grave with your tears. And Juliet says, yeah, let me weep for such a feeling loss. And again, as an audience, we're aware that she's not mourning the loss of Tybalt. What she's mourning is the loss of Romeo. Lady Capulet then says, find thou the means, and I'll find such a man. But now I'll tell thee joyful tidings, girl. Juliet, and joy comes well in such a needy time. What are they? Beseech your ladyship. So this is the building to the moment that's going to bring Juliet's world crashing down. So Lady Capulet's saying, I've got good news for you. Sit yourself down and listen. Finally, she says, marry my child early next Thursday morn, the gallant, young and noble gentleman, the County Paris at St. Peter's Church, shall happily make thee a joyful bride. So Lady Capulet thinks she's passing on this message of joy, that a gallant, young and noble gentleman, Paris, will happily make her a joyful bride. Now Juliet is obviously devastated by this news, because we know she's married. She can't marry Paris. She's already married to someone else. So she responds with, by St. Peter's Church and Peter too, he shall not make me a joyful bride. I wonder at this haste that I must be wed, ere he that should be my husband comes to woo. I pray you tell my lord and father, madam, I will not marry yet, and when I do, I swear it'll be Romeo, who you know I hate, rather than Paris. These are news indeed. So Juliet responds extremely strongly. She says, he will not make me a joyful bride. She wonders at the haste, so the speed at which this has been arranged. She even says that she would rather marry Romeo than Paris. And Romeo, at this time in the Capulet family, is the person who murdered their kinsman, Tybalt. So she's saying, I would rather marry someone like Romeo than marry Paris. Lady Capulet is stunned by this and says, "Here comes your father, tell him so yourself and see how he will take it in your hands." So Lady Capulet says, she's essentially saying, you will have to tell your father this, you will have to pass your thoughts and feelings onto him. I'm not going to say that to him. So Juliet, devastated by the news that she's to be married to Paris, and is now going to have to explain herself to her father. Okay, so for the next part of the scene, as Lord Capulet arrives, we need to remember our contextual links for the time period in which Shakespeare is writing. So we've got to think about femininity and think about young girls and the relationship with their father. So young girls were expected to be subservient to their father's wishes. The father would generally arrange a marriage, usually for political or monetary gain or status or social status. And the expectation would be that the girls would follow their father's lead and his choices. Now, Juliet is slightly different in this. She's actually quite rebellious and independent. Even her father, at the start of the play, when he's speaking to Paris, talks about how Juliet is too young of this world, that she's not ready to be married. But now, at the middle of Act 3, we have the decision that she's going to marry Paris. And when Lord Capulet arrives, he can't understand why Juliet would not want to. So we have Lady Capulet initially says, "I serve, but she will none. She gives you thanks. I would the fool were married to her grave." So Lady Capulet very strongly says that she thinks that Juliet has been foolish and that she should be married to her grave rather than to turn down Paris. Capulet can't understand. He says, take me with you, wife." And you're like, I just don't understand, explain more. How will she know him? Does she not give us thanks? Is she not proud? Does she not count herself blessed, unworthy as she is, to have wrought so worthy a gentleman to be her bride? So you say, you should be proud, you should be feeling blessed, you should be thankful to me for finding someone like Paris, who is so great and excellent a choice for you to be married. Juliet defends herself. Not proud that you have, but thankful that you have. Proud can I never be of what I hate, but thankful even for that hate, for it is meant with love. So she's saying, I'm thankful that you've done this. I'm thankful that you are looking out for me, but I cannot love Paris. I cannot marry someone that I hate. And Capulet becomes furious at this. He says, how chopped logic, what is this? Proud, and I thank you not. Are you not proud? Mistress minion you. Thank me no thankings, no proud me no prouds. He's saying you can't be both these things. I have done this for you, and you should be thankful for what I have done for you. You will go to St. Peter's Church, or I will drag thee on a hurdle thither. Out, you green sickness carrying, out, you baggage, you tallow face. So he says, you will be marrying Paris on Thursday, or I will drag you to that church. You disgust me. You make me feel sick by your choices. He continues, hang thee, young braggart, disobedient wretch. I tell thee what, get thee to church on Thursday, or never after look me in the face. Speak not, reply not, do not answer me. My fingers itch, wife. We scarce thought us blessed that God had lent us this but only child, but now I see that having one too much, and that we have a curse in having her out on her hiding. So he's becoming more and more furious, and we see the contextual links drawn in more and more. The fact that he describes her as disobedient, the fact that she's not obeying his commands is significant. Get thee to church on Thursday, or never after look me in the face. You will obey me, or I will never see you again. He even commands her, speak not, reply not, do not answer me, my fingers itch. So it's like implying that he's close to violence here. He's so angry. He tells his wife, we thought ourselves blessed to have this child, but in fact she's become a curse to us. So he continues with his anger as Juliet protests. The fact that he now says, God's bread, it makes me mad. Day, night, hour, tide, time, work, play, alone in company, still my care hath been to have her matched. He says, I spend in all of this time, all of this effort, all of this energy trying to find you a match, and I have found you, a gentleman of noble parentage, of fair demeanours, of youthful and nobly trained, stuffed, as they say, with honourable parts, proportioned as one's thoughts would wish a man. He's saying that Paris has all of the qualities that we would want in someone that you would want in someone to be married, someone who's noble parentage, a fair demeanour, youthful and noble. So I can't understand why Juliet would refuse this, to answer, "I'll not wed, I cannot love, I am too young, I pray thee pardon me." But he continues, "Look to think on it, I do not use to jest. Thursday is near, lay hand on thy on heart, advise, and be with you mine. I'll give you to my friend, and you be not hang, beg, starve, die in the streets." So he says, you are going to marry Paris. I am giving you to my friend. So again, contextual links here. And if you do not marry Paris, you are never going to see me again. You are going to beg and starve and die in the streets. I will not be forsworn, he ends this speech with. I will not change my mind. I will not break my promise. So Lord Capulet is absolutely furious with Juliet for daring to refuse to marry Paris. And ultimately, he says, you're going to marry him on Thursday or you're going to die in the streets. Okay, so after his proclamation and his devastating news for Juliet, Lord Capulet and Lady Capulet leave, and Juliet is absolutely devastated by this news. She doesn't know how she's going to be able to explain to her father and mother what's happening and how she's going to be able to get away from marrying Paris on Thursday. So she asks the nurse for advice. She says, "Oh God, oh nurse, how shall this be prevented? My husband is on earth, my faith in heaven. How shall that faith return again to earth unless that husband send it to me from heaven by leaving earth? Comfort me, counsel me." She's asking for advice. She needs some comfort. She needs some counsel. Alack, alack, that heaven should practise stratagems upon so soft a subject as myself. What sayest thou? Hast thou no word of joy? Some comfort, nurse. So again, she's talking about fate. She says, heaven should practice stratagems upon so soft a subject as myself. As if heaven is playing tricks, as if fate is playing tricks on her. And she feels as if she's being played, as if she's being manipulated. And she asks the nurse for some comfort. Give me some hope. The nurse tries to give her some comfort, but she says this: "Faith, here it is. Romeo is banished, and all the world to nothing, that he dares never come back to challenge you, or if he do, it needs must be by stealth. Then, since in this case stands as now it doth, I think it best you married with the county, or he is a lovely gentleman. Romeo's a dishcloth to him, an angel, an eagle, madam, hath not so green, so quick, so fair an eye as Paris hath. Beshrew my very heart, I think you are happy in this second match, for it excels your first, or if it did not, your first is dead, or 'twere good as he were, as living here, and you no use to him." So the nurse actually tries to give Juliet a sense of realism, a sense that Romeo is banished, and to the world he is gone. He's never going to dare to come back to Verona, and if he does, it'll have to be under the cover of darkness and stealth. So she says it would be best if you married Paris. Paris has lots of good qualities, and the nurse says she thinks that Juliet would be very happy in the second match because it excels, it goes beyond the first match, it goes beyond Romeo. Because even now, Romeo is as good as dead. There's no way that this marriage can work, and it would be better for everybody to move on. Now Juliet listens to what the nurse has to say, but then as soon as the nurse leaves, she responds with, "Ancient damnation, most wicked fiend, it is more sin to wish me thus forsworn, or to dispraise my lord with that same tongue, which she had praised him above compare so many thousand times. Go, counsellor, thou and my bosom henceforth shall be twain. I'll to the friar to know his remedy, or all else fail, myself have power to die." So Juliet says an ancient damnation on the nurse, a wicked fiend, for her to suggest that marrying Paris is a good idea, that she couldn't speak bad things about Romeo when she's spoken so many good things before. She says rather than stick to the nurse's advice, she's going to go and speak to Friar Lawrence to find out if there's a plan, if there's a solution. the only thing that she now has control of. If everything else fails, she has the power to die. She has the power to take her own life. Again, foreshadowing what potentially might happen in the later acts. Okay, so a really interesting scene there to wrap up Act 3, and it again ends on a cliffhanger with Juliet off to see the friar to try and find a solution, but ending with the words die, the foreshadowing of what might potentially happen to her in the future, her and Romeo's relationship. So what I'd like you to do with this scene is to rewatch the video, reread the scene, and to try and pick, to map the progression of the scene, looking at least 10 key quotations. And then, for each of the 3 key characters in this scene, Juliet, Lord Capulet and Lady Capulet, I'd like to make a character map looking at a few quotations around each one about their attitudes, their feelings, their beliefs. In particular, this is a really good scene to look at Lord Capulet and look at his relationship with Juliet. There's a lot of really interesting things here to compare to the start of the play with. So those 2 tasks are just going to pop up on screen now, and if you hang around at the end, we'll have today's film recommendation for you. Okay, for today's film recommendation, I've gone for a British classic from the 90s, looking at a sort of feel-good story, a story about following your own dreams and your own beliefs and your own desires, and that's Billy Elliot. Obviously set in the northeast, so it's quite a prominent one for us. It looks at relationships between parents and children. It looks at following your own path in life and doing things that are unconventional and different. Really worth a look, and obviously a very good feel-good story. So next time we're probably going to start to have a look at a recap of Act 3 and just put everything together so we understand how this all fits together, and then we're moving on to look at Act 4 and Act 5. Until next time, take care.